A man is murdered. His sons are suspects. But this isn't about the crime, it's about the collapse of the human soul. The Brothers Karamazov isn't just a novel, it's a war. Between reason and faith, freedom and control, God and nothingness, Dostoevsky saw the future. What he wrote in 1880 reads like a warning for right now. Nietzsche called him the only psychologist he ever respected. Jung said the brothers aren't people, they're pieces of your own mind. Even modern thinkers like Jordan Peterson still pull from this book like it's scripture, because it is. In a way, Dostoevsky wrote this after surviving a mock execution, years in a Siberian prison. His body broke. His faith didn't. This book was his last shot, his final message. He knew he was running out of time. And what did he leave us? A portrait of a family in ruins, a society in free fall, and a soul torn in three. It's not just a story, it's a mirror, and what it shows is hard to look at. Let's begin. Before he wrote The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky died. Not metaphorically. He was led to a firing squad, blindfolded, seconds from being shot. Then out of nowhere, pardon from the Tsar. A cruel joke, a psychological scar, but also a turning point. He was exiled to Siberia. Hard labor, freezing nights, no pen, no paper, no privacy. Just years to sit alone with his thoughts. And in that silence, something shifted. He didn't come back the same man. The old Dostoevsky believed in ideas. The new one believed in suffering. He came back obsessed with the soul, with guilt, with the terrifying freedom of being human. This wasn't some academic exercise. He'd lived through the death of the self. And he came back to warn us what was coming next. And by the time he started writing The Brothers Karamazov, he knew this would be his final word. Not just a novel, a battlefield, a trial, a confession. He poured every trauma, every revelation, every desperate question into those pages. He didn't want to entertain us, he wanted to expose us. But here's where it gets darker. This wasn't just about his life. It was about yours. Because what he put on trial in that book was the modern mind, and we haven't passed the test. Section 2. The brothers aren't just brothers, they're you. 3 brothers, 1 dead father. A murder mystery, that's the surface. But Dostoevsky wasn't interested in plot. He was dissecting the soul. Each brother, not a character, a piece. Of you, Ivan, the mind, cold, brilliant, tortured. He argues God doesn't exist, and even if he did, he'd be guilty. Ivan's the voice that wants answers, logic, justice. But his logic leads him straight to madness, Dmitri. The body, all appetite and chaos. He drinks, he fights, he loves too hard. He's guilty of everything, except the thing he's accused of. Dmitri lives like God doesn't exist, but wishes he did. He's trapped between guilt and pleasure, begging for a redemption he doesn't think he deserves. And then there's Alyosha, the soul, pure, quiet, strange. He believes in love, in goodness, in something beyond all this mess. He's not naive. He sees the rot, but he still holds on, even when everything falls apart. 3 brothers, 1 mind. Ivan is the head, Dmitri the heart, Alyosha the spirit. They don't just fight each other, they fight inside you. And Dostoevsky's real question? Which one wins? But here's the twist. One of them talks to the devil, and the devil makes a lot of sense. The devil, the inquisitor, and the collapse of meaning. Now we get to Ivan. The mind, the doubter, the one who dares to say what others only whisper. Ivan doesn't reject God out of arrogance. He rejects him out of horror. He looks at a world full of dead children, senseless cruelty, and pointless pain, and he asks, what kind of God lets this happen? If God is real, he has some explaining to do. If he's not, we're on our own. That's not atheism. That's metaphysical despair. Albert Camus built an entire philosophy around this. The absurd, the silent universe, the unbearable weight of freedom with no moral compass. But Dostoevsky got there first, and Ivan doesn't just think these things, he feels them. So deeply, he starts hallucinating. That's when the devil shows up. Not with horns, not with fire, Just a tired, clever, chatty old man in a threadbare coat. Casual, bored, almost friendly. This isn't Satan from the Bible. This is the voice in your head. The voice that says, "What's the point?" The one that makes self-destruction sound like reason. The one that tells you morality is just social conditioning. That love is weakness. That freedom is a burden. That you're better off numb. Nietzsche saw this coming. He said when God dies, we don't get freedom, we get vertigo. And most people will run to anything that gives them structure, even if it kills their soul. And that's where the Grand Inquisitor comes in. Ivan writes a parable. Jesus returns to earth. The church arrests him. The Inquisitor tells him, you gave people freedom. That was your mistake. They don't want it. They want comfort, bread, authority. So Christ is rejected not because he failed, but because he was too much. This is Foucault before Foucault, Chomsky before Chomsky, a system that controls people. Not through violence, but through love repackaged as fear, through safety sold as obedience. Dostoevsky saw that a society that abandons truth doesn't become free, it becomes hollow, and hollow people are easy to control. Ivan doesn't kill his father, but his ideas do. He opens the door, and the abyss walks in. And here's the part that should rattle you. Ivan is the smartest character in the book, and he still couldn't handle the truth he uncovered. So ask yourself, if logic can't save him, can it save you? We're not done yet, because what happens next shows just how far a soul can fall and how hard it is to climb back out. Section 3. The Devil, the Inquisitor, and the Collapse of Meaning. Let's not sugarcoat it. Ivan Karamazov is dangerous, not because he's evil. He's not. He's brilliant, honest, even noble in his way. But he does something no one else in the novel dares to do. He stares into the abyss and he refuses to blink. His logic is clean, razor sharp, and it cuts God to pieces. If children suffer, he says, then no future harmony is worth it. He doesn't deny God because he lacks belief. He denies God on moral grounds. He indicts the universe, not with blasphemy but with grief. And this is where the soul begins to break. Because Ivan doesn't just question religion, he rips out the foundation of moral order. He does exactly what Dostoevsky feared modern intellectuals would do, what Nietzsche would later celebrate in The Gay Science. He kills God with reason. But here's the catch. When you kill God, you don't get peace, you get madness. Because when there's no higher power, no objective truth, no eternal justice, everything becomes permitted. Or worse, everything becomes meaningless. That's the weight Ivan carries, and eventually it breaks him. And into that crack, the devil walks in. Now let's pause here. This devil isn't Milton's fallen angel or the fire and brimstone villain you grew up with. No, this is Dostoevsky's masterpiece. A devil with no grandeur, no menace, just indifference. A devil who's ordinary, familiar, boring, even. And that's the horror, because this devil isn't trying to tempt Ivan. He doesn't need to. He just confirms what Ivan already suspects. That nothing matters. That consciousness is a mistake. That freedom is unbearable. And morality is a joke. He talks circles around ethics, faith, existence, until every solid idea turns into smoke. Freud later called this the death drive. Jung called it the shadow. Modern psychology calls it existential nihilism, that low hum of despair underneath all the performance, that feeling that nothing is real, that maybe you aren't even real. But Dostoevsky put it in a room, gave it a voice, and let it whisper in Ivan's ear, and it doesn't scream, it shrugs, then it smiles. Now Ivan isn't done yet. He tries to fight back, with reason, with willpower, with pride. But here's the devastating twist. He's already opened the door. The devil doesn't need to push, just step aside. And that's when the Grand Inquisitor arrives. This is the philosophical core of the novel. Not a dream, not a hallucination, a parable, Ivan's own creation. In it, Christ returns to earth, performs miracles. The people rejoice, but the church is not impressed. They arrest him. And the Inquisitor, an old, powerful bishop, visits him in prison. He tells Christ something terrifying. You gave people freedom, and they hated it, because freedom is hard. It demands choice, responsibility, sacrifice, and most people don't want that. They want comfort, security, certainty. So the Church, the Inquisitor says, has corrected Christ's mistake. They've given the people what they really want: bread instead of truth, rules instead of love, obedience instead of choice. This is power. Not through force, but through mercy. A dark mercy. One that doesn't ask anything of you except your soul. And the worst part: the Inquisitor knows he's betraying the truth. He doesn't care. He says it's for the greater good. Sound familiar, Foucault? Would later describe this as the hidden face of institutions, how control is masked as care. Huxley imagined it in Brave New World, a society drugged into blissful obedience. Even Skinner pushed it in behavioral psychology, freedom as illusion, and control as compassion. But Dostoevsky said it first. He saw the shape of modern tyranny, not with guns or prisons, but with love weaponized into chains. And this brings us back to Ivan. He creates this parable. He lays it out. Then he steps back. But he can't escape it. The idea has infected him. And the infection spreads into his brother, into the murder, into the collapse of everything he tried to understand. Because once you say there is no God, what happens next? Do you build your own morality, or do you lose yourself in the void? Ivan never finds out. Because by the end of the novel, he's unraveling, hearing voices, seeing devils, raving in court. The mind that tore down God can't hold itself together. Dostoevsky's message is clear. Without a center, faith, truth, something, you spiral, maybe not immediately, maybe not dramatically, but eventually something gives. And when it does, it doesn't sound like screaming. It sounds like laughing, quietly, in your ear. Now ask yourself, how close are you to hearing that voice? And more importantly, what would it say? Let's keep going. Because there's still one brother left standing. And somehow he might be the most important one of all. Section 4. The Last Brother Standing. Why Alyosha Matters. So far, we've seen the mind collapse. We've watched Ivan, the thinker, tear the world apart and get torn apart in return. We've seen Dmitri, the passionate one, drown in guilt. Chaos and the shadow of a crime he may not have committed. But one brother doesn't break, Alyosha, the quiet one, the soft one, the monk. Most people underestimate him. He doesn't argue like Ivan. He doesn't rage like Dmitri. He just listens, watches, prays, and somehow holds it together when everything else falls apart. But don't mistake that for weakness, because Alyosha is Dostoevsky's answer to everything. Alyosha represents what survives after doubt, guilt, and despair burn through the soul. He's not naive. He sees the same suffering Ivan does. He knows people lie, steal, murder, betray. He's watched it happen in his own family. But where Ivan turns to philosophy and Dmitri to chaos, Alyosha turns toward others. He doesn't retreat from the world. He goes into it, into pain, into confusion, into death, and he responds with love. Now, love is a dangerous word, overused, watered down. But Dostoevsky didn't mean sentimentality. He meant sacrifice, service, compassion that demands something from you, a kind of active faith, not in dogma, but in the dignity of the human soul. Alyosha doesn't preach. He lives, quietly, consistently. While the other brothers tear themselves apart, he shows up, again and again, to comfort a dying child, to forgive a broken man, to carry the pieces the others leave behind. And here's the twist. Dostoevsky once said that if he had to choose between Christ and the truth, he'd choose Christ. That's not blind faith. That's a choice to trust in love, even when reason fails. A choice Ivan couldn't make. Alyosha makes it, not because he's better, but because he sees something Ivan doesn't. That faith doesn't always explain suffering. Sometimes it just gives you the strength to keep living through it. This idea shows up later in Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, psychiatrist, and thinker who said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Alyosha is that why, not an answer, but an anchor. And it's not about religion either. It's about meaning, connection, a reason to stay human in a world that makes it so easy not to be. Alyosha shows us what's left after the fire, and maybe that's the point. Dostoevsky wasn't handing out solutions. He was drawing a map of the soul. And Alyosha is the direction he hopes we'll walk in, because in a world where intellect collapses into madness and pleasure into destruction, someone has to stay human, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. But here's the problem. We don't live in a world that values Alyosha anymore. So the question is, can this kind of soul still survive now, or have we become a society of Ivans? You'll want to hear how Dostoevsky leaves us, because it's not with a happy ending. It's with a warning and maybe a final test. Section 5. The Final Judgment. Dostoevsky's Last Warning. By the end of the Brothers Karamazov, the crime is solved. Dmitri is found guilty. Maybe rightly, maybe not. Ivan loses his mind. The devil has taken root. Alyosha walks out into the world, still faithful, still broken, still trying. But nothing feels resolved. Because Dostoevsky didn't write this to wrap things up. He wrote it to leave something behind. A moral time bomb. A blueprint of the modern soul. Fractured, brilliant, volatile, lost. Each brother carrying a part of us, and all of them circling the same impossible questions. Is there meaning? Is there justice? Is there a God? And if not, who are we without him? This wasn't just literature, it was prophecy. Dostoevsky saw what the 20th century would become. A world of ideologies without morals, technology without wisdom, power without soul. He didn't need to see Auschwitz or Hiroshima to know what happens when you kill the idea of higher truth and try to build meaning from nothing. He saw it already starting in his time, in intellectual circles, in political movements, in people who thought progress could replace the soul, and so he sent us a warning. Wrapped in story, disguised as fiction, whispered through the voices of 3 broken brothers. He's not telling us what to believe, he's telling us what happens if we believe nothing. That's the final test, because here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. Ivan will always sound smarter, Dmitri will always feel more alive, but Alyosha is the one who lasts, and Dostoevsky knew we wouldn't want to follow him. We'd admire him, quote him, maybe even pity him, but to live like Alyosha, to forgive when you've been wronged, to love in a world that feels unlovable, to believe when everything in you wants to doubt, that takes more than intelligence. It takes courage. And it takes faith, not in religion necessarily, but in something bigger than yourself. The tragedy is, most of us won't make that choice, and that's the final warning. In the end, Dostoevsky didn't ask us to agree with him. He just asked us to look in the mirror and ask, which brother are you? Because the soul of modernity isn't found in arguments or evidence or outcomes. It's found in what you do when no one is watching, in whether you fall into the abyss or step back from it. And maybe, just maybe, start building something solid before it's too late. You made it this far. That says something. Most people can't sit with this level of discomfort. Most people tune out when the questions get too big, too dark, too close to home. But the Brothers Karamazov doesn't let you off the hook. It's not entertainment. It's an X-ray of your soul, and whether you agree with Dostoevsky or not, he forces you to decide. Do you live like Ivan, think like Ivan, suffer like Ivan? Or do you still believe in something beyond yourself, even if the world laughs at you for it? This book isn't about Russia. It's not about religion. It's about you, your choices, your conscience, your soul. And that's why it still matters. If this hit you, if it stirred something, say so. I want to hear which brother you see in yourself, or which one scares you most. And if you want more like this, deep dives into the human condition, the hidden warnings buried in classic ideas, subscribe. Because this isn't just a channel. It's a place for minds that still think and souls that refuse to sleepwalk through life. Thanks for watching. And remember, the devil doesn't need to burn you. He just needs you to stop asking questions. Until next time.